Okay, US Soccer has actually not officially released the roster at the time of this recording, well, this stream. I don't know why it's delayed, but Larry Henry, which is a media member, he got the email from US Soccer and he kind of just leaked the roster after 11 a.m. And we're going to go through it. Obviously, if US Soccer does release it in the meantime, we'll go through it. Maybe it's a bit delayed because they could be switching someone. Johnny had a minor injury yesterday for Internacional. We don't know how serious it is. He's being tested right now at Internacional in Brazil. So that could change. But overall, this is the roster of the second Berhalter era. And to my surprise, this ain't a bad roster. I'm going to explain to you why. We're going to go through some names that are missing because they're injured. We're going to go through that. But overall, this is actually not a bad roster. We're going to go through this roster. Then I'm going to go through, obviously, Greg Berhalter's interview or PR article yesterday from Vanity Fair. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the stream. But we have the roster here, and there's a lot of good things. I know there's some names that y'all might be like, what the heck is this? And there's some big names missing, but there's a lot of players that are missing because they're injured. So before we even start diving into this roster, here are the names of players that are injured. Okay. Oh, the official roster has been posted. You guys want me to put on that? Okay, I can go to the official roster. Let me check it here. If the official roster is out, I'll put it here. But before we even start, I am going to obviously the official roster is here. To my surprise, okay, let me put it here. The official roster is out. Let me get this out of the way. And let's put the official roster here just to make sure all the names are there. Okay. So here it is. I think it's on screen right now, isn't it? There it is. Here is the official roster of the U.S. men's national team. We have Drake Callender from Inter Miami on goal, Ethan Horvath and Matt Turner that both play for Nottingham Forest as the goalkeepers. The three goalkeepers right there, to me, that's it. Those are probably our top three right now. Zach Steffen, who the hell knows what happened to Zach Steffen at this point? He has fallen off quite a bit. So far, so good. Nothing to complain about with that goalkeeping. Now, defenders. Before we even start, let me go through the names of players that are not available due to injury. Cameron Carter-Vickers, he's injured. Tyler Adams, recovering from injury. Gio Reina, that we're going to address at the end of the stream, he's also injured. Josh Sargent, he's injured and should be out for months, according to his coach, David Wagner. Taylor Booth, injured. Luca De La Torre was allegedly injured, but it looks like Luca De La Torre is healthy. Alejandro Zendejas is injured. Daryl DK is injured. Walker Zimmerman is probably not fully fit. He is recovering from an injury, but we're going to go through now the names. But these are the players that are not here because they're injured before anyone overreacts of why Sargent's not here, why Reina's not here, why Carter Vickers is not here, why Tyler Adams is not here. But it looks like Berhalter has moved on from his terrible MLS lifers. It looks like he's actually moved on from them. Of course, this is just the first roster, so take it with a grain of salt. But let's go through it. Now, defenders. He brought Serginho Dest. Serginho Dest is there from PSV. Christopher Lund. He is a fullback from Palermo in the second division of Italy. He's actually Danish-American. And it's a bit of a surprise that he's here. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't really watched Christopher Lund much, so I don't know what to tell you about this call-up of Christopher Lund. But he's a fullback, and he's based off the roster. He is probably a left. Well, he can play left back and right back, so I'm not sure what's the deal here. But look, I'm all for bringing Christopher Lund, a young player that is abroad right now. I mean, it is the second division of Italy. That's not that great. But he plays for Palermo. That is a traditional team in Italy. I'm okay with that call-up. We'll see what he can offer. I'd rather have Christopher Lund than DeAndre Yedlin, Shaq Moore, right? Washed up veterans. So I'm not sure what to think about this player, but I'm open to his call-up. I'll say that. I'm kind of not against Greg doing this. Mark McKenzie from Genk is called up. As I said, John Brooks wouldn't be called up regardless. He has issues with Greg, and Cameron Carter-Vickers is injured. Kevin Paredes, that's a good call-up. It's interesting that Greg Berhalter put Kevin Paredes as a defender. Kevin Paredes as a defender is an interesting one because he plays mainly as a winger for Wolfsburg, but we've seen also Kevin Paredes play as a fullback in the past, even when he was at DC United here in Major League Soccer. Tim Ream, he's back with the national team, rightfully so. Chris Richards, that's the right call, despite the lack of minutes. Chris Richards had a very good game yesterday. I understand it was against a weaker opposition, but he's always been very good every time he played for Crystal Palace. And then you got Jedi Robinson, our best left back, Miles Robinson called in, and then Joe Scally. So no DeAndre Edlin, no Shaq Moore, no Aaron Long. All of that is very promising, very encouraging. But going on, we have the midfielders. Then we have Johnny Cardoso from Internacional having a great season in Brazil. Then you have Ben Kremaski from Inter Miami, which, as I said, Ben Kremaski, I tweeted this a while back. The only reason for his inclusion is based off potential. He is not at the U.S. men's national team standard right now, but he is a dual national, and calling him up is not an issue. But of course, if it was a competitive game like the Copa America, there are better players we can bring. That's what I'm trying to say. But for this friendly, bringing a player to recruit, a young, promising player, I'm okay with that. Luca De La Torre makes total sense as long as he's healthy. Weston McKennie obviously has to be there from Juventus. Yunus Musa from AC Milan obviously has to be there. Probably our two starters, Weston and Yunus Musa. And then you also have the inclusion or the re-inclusion of Malik Tillman from PSV, which I also very much like. Malik Tillman is back here with the roster. The forwards, we have Brendan Aronson from Union Berlin, Fullerton Balogun from now Monaco. He's going to be announced by Monaco today or tomorrow. Cade Cowell, which is a weird one for me when you think about wingers, because you could literally just place Kevin Paredes, and also I don't think Cade Cowell is at the U.S. men's national team level yet. But again, when you think about the players that are not available, we talked about how Gio Reina is not available. He can play on the wing. Taylor Booth is not available. He can play on the wing. Zendejas, even though Zendejas was terrible in the Gold Cup, he can play on the wing. You start to think about it, it would have been maybe Cade Cowell or maybe like Jordan Morris. Is Poriola healthy? I don't even know if Poriola is healthy. I think he is. So when you take that into account, I'd much rather have Cade Cowell right now than Morris, Ariola. He's a young player that can improve. So you're starting to build something off of that. Well, a lot of these MLS veterans, they already are not good enough for the national team. And once we hit 2026, they'll even be more washed up, right? Or they'll just be done with their career. So not done, but you know what I mean? Already on a decline, even though they shouldn't even be right now. So when you take into account the wingers that were not available, I'd rather have Cade Cowell instead of Morris and those guys. Now, some of you might be asking, what about Luca Coleosho? Well, Luca Coleosho, the young winger that plays for Burnley, that is also American, he was born in the United States, he is provisionally cap tied to Italy. So since he's provisionally cap tied to Italy, I believe he would have to file a one-time switch to come into camp for the United States. So I've heard that Greg Berhalter has been in touch with Coleosho. So it's probably one of those cases where Luca Coleosho was just like, I'm not ready to commit for a national team, so he wouldn't come in. Because I'm pretty sure he would have called in a guy playing the Premier League over Cade Cowell, for example. So that's probably the reasoning, so we don't overreact to it. And again, Cade is a young player, so there's no issue there. Ricardo Pepi returns. That's a positive because there were question marks in regards to Ricardo Pepi's relationship with Greg Berhalter. That's a positive. That's said and done. Pepe's back. Everything's good there. We're going to talk about Gio Reyna in a second. Christian Pulisic, obviously a no-brainer, and Timothy Weah listed as a forward, even though he's been playing at the club level as a fullback or right wing back for a while. Very involved on offense with Juventus. And usually it's like a wing back position where when they're in possession, he looks more like a winger. But Timothy Weah is with the national team as well. Here's my first reaction. You guys know that I'm very critical in regards to Greg Berhalter. And it even did reach a point last year or when Berhalter was in charge that I was even thinking Berhalter's like prime Messi. You don't look to stop him anymore. You just look to contain him. He's going to do something stupid at some point. But overall, this roster is good because he didn't have many players available that should have been there. Like Tyler Adams would have been there. That's another one. Cameron Carter-Vickers, would he have been there? I would have brought Carter-Vickers over McKenzie or Miles Robinson. And would Greg have done that? I don't know. Probably. That's just me speculating. Gio Reyna, That's what we're going to talk about very soon, because that's actually the big issue with Greg Berhalter right now, that he hasn't talked to Gio. We're going to address that in a second. Josh Sargent, would he have been there? Maybe I would have brought Josh Sargent instead of Cal. Sargent can play on the wing if you need him to. Taylor Booth probably would have been there. So overall, very good roster for what he had available, because players are injured. So props to Greg for that. Got to give credit where credit is due, right? Elijah's asking here on the super chat, Luna, cap tied. Either way, nice to be available to get him involved. Well, Lund. Well, listen, Lund will not get cap tied because these are friendlies. You need to play a certain amount of friendlies to consider it a cap tie. But we'll see. We'll see. But I like this call up of Christopher Lund. I'm actually happy that he called him in. He's a young player. I don't know what to expect. I can't lie and say that I watched this guy in the Serie B in Palermo right now. But we'll see at what level Christopher Lund is playing. Don Vasquez, thank you for the super chat here. $1. Thank you, Don Vasquez. Greg Berhalter saying, I'm trolling. The roster has Jesus, Morris, and Roldan. No, thank goodness. No Jesus Ferreira, no Morris, no Roldan. Thank you. Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you, Greg. The federal agent, Fed, here saying, considering the injuries, this is a pleasant roster. I agree. As I said, I agree. This is a pleasant roster. If this was a competitive roster and everyone was healthy, I'd replace Calendar, Kramaski, and Cade, the C's, with Gio, Adams, and Gaga. So I'll tell you one thing. Yeah, I would replace also Cade Cowell, Gio Reina. Kramaski, I would definitely replace him with Tyler Adams. Drake Calendar and Gabriel Sonina, sure, but that's more just like you're trying to give Sonina just experience at that point. But yeah, Gio and Adams for sure. Gaga and Calendar, I don't know how much I would care, but I would definitely be putting Gio and that. I would also probably, if they were healthy, I would probably also put Cameron Carter Vickers, and I would probably replace Mackenzie or Miles Robinson with Cameron Carter Vickers. Let's see, Dixon. I'm not reading your entire name there. I'm not falling for that. Just realizing Dest not on the roster, but on the photo. Dest is on the roster, Dixon. He's the first name right there on the defenders. Serginho Dest is on the roster. Did I not say Dest's name? It's right there above Christopher Lund, Serginho Dest from PSV. He's definitely there in the roster. And everyone, drop a like. Don't forget to drop a like. Now let's address, before I go back to Twitter and before I end the stream, let's talk about this yesterday. And I want to talk about Berhalter's Vanity interview. So if you haven't heard, yesterday, Vanity Fair released an interview with Greg Berhalter, a written article talking to Greg Berhalter. And in this article, I'm not going to read the entire article here in the stream. It's very long. You can read it yourself. But I want to put one thing first. Why Vanity Fair? This is the description of what Vanity Fair is. Vanity Fair is a monthly magazine of pop culture, fashion, and current affairs published by Condé Nast in the United States. It's really not like ESPN, CBS Sports Network. It's not really a sports coverage magazine, as far as I know. I never actually heard of Vanity Fair, just to be honest with you. But anyhow, it was released in Vanity Fair. And I'm going to go to the CBS article because it's much shorter. And I want to go through it here because to me, this was all PR for Greg Berhalter. It was written just to make him look good and make it look like he was trying. It even talks about how he's like consulting me, like, someone as a mediator, like an expert in mediation to help him fix the issue with Reina. We talked to people close to Reina. We talked to multiple sources close to like the Reina camp or whatever. They've all said the same. And Reina kind of made that implied. Gio Reyna wants to play for the national team. So if Greg Berhalter reaches out to him and they just talk, they might not be best friends again. That's probably not going to happen. That ship has sailed, maybe. But I can assure you Gio will do his best to play for the national team. So if Greg wants Gio back and Gio wants to be back, it'll happen. The question is, does Greg actually want him back? I think he does. I think he does. But at the same time, I have some suspicions because this PR article that came out, this public relations article that came out, was literally one day prior to the roster release. So it almost seems like the stage was being set. It's all weird. We also had Greg Berhalter a few months back say that he was going to talk to Gio by September. My question is, was he just assuming that Gio was injured and he wouldn't have to talk him now and he could delay it? Also, why delay it? it just creates more speculation, toxicity. It's not worth it. He can just go talk to Giovanni Reina. He doesn't need experts. Wasn't he hired for his leadership skills? Wasn't that one of the things Matt Crocker talked about? How Greg Berhalter's leadership skills and how he can build a group and communicate well. Well, now's the time to do that. Communicate with Giovanni Reina. You're the guy that's like 50 years old. Talk to the 20-year-old. Talk some sense to it. And let's be honest, if he talks to Gio and wants Gio back and Gio doesn't want to come back, then I guess it's on Gio Reyna for that sense, or mostly the Federation, because the Federation tends to overcomplicate things. We probably did not need Greg Berhalter back. We needed a fresh start, but they brought Berhalter back. Now, again, the roster Berhalter just released was very encouraging. I don't want to take that away from it. But let's go through this article, and you can leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, thinking if Greg will bring Gio Reyna back or not. That's the big question here. Is this all PR? He's just trying to set the stage. But they say right here, U.S. men's national team coach Greg Berhalter has talked to Gio Reyna since the World hasn't talked to Gio Reyna since the World Cup, and he's open to a reunion with the U.S. star. He had already said that. Berhalter and the Reinas were in public dispute that resulted in an investigation following the 2022 World Cup. So let's go through this here. And this is talking about the article with Vanity Fair. And once again, why did Greg talk to Vanity Fair and not some actual like sports websites that cover soccer? Because it was probably PR. There was probably an agreement of what things would be written, what would be talked about. Greg has to look good. It has to look like Greg is trying. That is the main reason for all of it. So let's go through this here. But let me just go through the super chat before I read it. Julian Diva is saying, I'm surprised Jesus isn't there. 29 said yesterday that Pepe is fifth in Greg's depth chart for the 9. Yeah, I mean, I know 29 talks to the players. Maybe Greg didn't open up to the players enough, but clearly Pepe's ahead of Jesus right now. Let's see here. Alex S. There are better players abroad than Cow, Miles Robinson, and Kremaski. How is this a good lineup? One bad political player on the roster drastically affects the team. So better than Kremaski, better than Cow, better than Robinson? Yes, there are. Well, abroad, Taylor Booth is injured. Who would we bring for the winger position at this point? There's so many players that are injured, unless you put Kevin Paredes on the wing. Kremaski, yes, we have better players than Kremaski, even in Major League Soccer. But the thing with Kremaski is he might be bringing him just for recruitment purposes. The kid is 18. He's 18. He's promising. If you bring him in, that's fine. I'm hoping it's not political. I'm hoping it's for recruitment purposes, and he does see actual potential, and not to just promote Major League Soccer. That's what I'm hoping for. Miles Robinson, yes. Cameron Carter-Vickers is better than Miles Robinson, but he's not available. John Brooks is better than Miles Robinson, but him and Greg have beef. So what am I going to do about that? What am I going to say about that? What's the other center back that we can bring? Who are we missing? That's the question. Overall, it's a good roster, but I agree with you. Yeah, of course there's better players. And if this was the Copa America or an actual competitive tournament, I would have issues with him bringing certain players like the ones you mentioned pretty much. But overall, I just don't know. Who would you, Alex, let me know in the chat, who would you replace Kate Cowell, Miles Robinson, and Kremaski with the players that are available? I gave you a list of names. Carter Vickers is injured. Tyler Adams is injured. Joe Reyna is injured. Sargent is injured. Booth is injured. Zendejas is injured. Who would you bring? I'm open to hearing suggestions. Maybe Paxton Aronson? Not really a winger, but that's a good option. Power of Music. Hell yeah. The tenor testament of left backs. Christopher Lund. Here, let's go. Yeah, we'll see how Christopher Lund does. I'm not overly excited, but I'm also not angry that he's there. We've been having issues getting left backs. He's playing abroad. Let's see how he does. Tenor Testament could have been there. I think Tenor Testament would probably be more of a reasonable option than Brent Kremaski. Now that we're talking about Alex's super chat, Tenor Testament probably earned it more, but he went with Brent Kremaski. That's probably one of them. Jeff, how you doing, man? Saying good rosters, a lot of injuries, weak opposition. What do you think of his formation will be? By the way, you are a handsome gentleman with a great personality and not a communist. Thank you very much, Jeff, for the compliment. Thank you very much. What do I think of the formation will be? Look, Greg Berhalter loves his 4-3-3, standard 4-3-3. Obviously, in possession, it changes. There's different phases of play. I'm not going to get into that. But usually it's a 4-3-3 with Greg Berhalter. With BJ Callahan and with Anthony Hudson, we saw 4-2-3-1 mainly. We had a 10. Gio Reyna was the 10. We'll see what Berhalter does. We'll see what he does. I'm not sure. maybe what Anthony Hudson was doing and BJ Callahan, Greg builds off that. Malik Tillman is in the roster. I personally see Malik Tillman as a 10. So maybe Tillman will be playing that role that Gio Reyna normally plays, and they'll be the ones interchanging. I think based on the roster, we might see a 4-2-3-1. I think so, with Tillman maybe at the 10. But that could just be me being overly optimistic. But that's the feeling I'm getting from the roster that we're seeing. But let's go back here to let's go back to what's his name, to the freaking article here. Greg Berhalter said he has yet to speak to Gio Reyna after their families were involved in a post-World Cup feud, but is eager to repair the professional relationship as he resumes his role as the U.S. men's national team head coach. Once again, I know for a fact that Greg Berhalter did go and talk to Lucho Acosta from FC Cincinnati, a dual national that could maybe be representing the U.S. men's national team a year from now. So my question to that is, if he had time to meet up with Lucho Acosta, which is 100% irrelevant right now, and even in the future, I don't think we'll need Lucho Acosta with Reina and Tillman available, Paxton Aronson developing, along with the fact that Lucho Acosta, I think he's a good player. He's a good player, but you don't really have to recruit him. Argentina ain't calling him up, so you don't have to recruit him. Greg Berhalter had time to talk to Gio Reyna, and he hasn't done so yet. That's what I think, and I think a lot of people agree with that. They then go on to add, saying, in an interview with Vanity Fair, Berhalter said that he has been in touch with just everyone in the U.S. men's national team player pool before he resumes the job. Nearly everyone minus Reina. That doesn't sound good to me, right? That doesn't sound good to me. I do understand that he did say that he wants to repair the relationship. Then just freaking repair it. Just repair it. Anyhow, he needs apparently a mediator, an expert, a mediator that's an expert in that to help him. 50-year-old man needs that. Just, dude, it doesn't have to be on the phone. I agree with that in regards to Berhalter. But you can pick up the phone, call Gio and say, we need to talk in person. I want you back in the team. Are you willing to do so? Yes? Okay, we'll meet up. Greg Berhalter was in Europe. Wasn't he in Europe not so long ago? Could have talked to Gio Reyna. But anyhow, let's go on here. Berhalter described the decision as deliberate and strategic, considering the sensitivity of the situation, and has consulted experts in mediation to ensure that the situation is handled in the right way. That's where I have an issue here. Like, I'm pretty sure the experts told him to not call. He thinks it can go south in terms of calling. South, I mean, just go poorly. Sure, follow the instructions. I guess U.S. Soccer might have hired someone, or Berhalter, who the fuck knows at this point. But there's only one solution at the end of the day. And I'm assuming Berhalter is a smart guy. Wasn't he hired because of his leadership and communications and how he builds good relationships? Go talk to Gio Reyna in person. It's pretty simple. It's actually pretty simple. And if Gio actually wants to be in the national team, this conversation should not be that complicated. Of course, it can get to a point where Gio doesn't want to play for Berhalter. And then I can assure you there's nothing Berhalter or any expert can do about it. But I think he would play. I think he would. As Berhalter described it, it's not something where you pick up the phone and say, hey, bud, here's how it's going to be. There's some work to be done. No, you freaking idiot. That's not how you do it. But you pick up the phone and you schedule a day to talk in person. And then you have a conversation. You become a man and you have a conversation face to face. You tell him the issues you had with him. Tell him that there's going to have to be respect, that you're the coach, he's the player. And Gio also says the issues he has. And you go from there. But that's just me. That's just me, right? I'm not an expert on, I can't be the guy to do it. I'm not the expert on it. But let's see what else they have to say here. They also said Berhalter and his wife, Roslyn, had a decades-long friendship with the Reina's parents, Claudio and Danielle, when their dispute started late last year. Days after the U.S. men's national team was eliminated from the World Cup in the round 16 by Netherlands, the coach spoke at a How Institute for Society Summit on moral leadership, which he lacked that moral leadership, I guess. He shared a story about a player that was nearly sent home from the World Cup, clearly not meeting expectations. And though the comments were intended to be private for the audience, they became public days later. So essentially, Greg Berhalter was an idiot for doing so, okay? Blah, blah, blah. Reporting soon followed that indicated that Reina was the player, setting off a chain of reaction of events that led to an investigation into Berhalter. The investigation was that he kicked his wife like 30 years later. Reina's parents were upset that Berhalter's comments contacted U.S. Soccer sporting director Ernie Stewart, and Danielle Reina told Stewart about an incident of domestic violence involving Berhalter's inaction of retaliation. Yeah, going back to that, again, not supporting what the Reinas did. Never will support that. But I think I don't know how much it was retaliation. From what I understood in the story back then, what happened was Danielle Reina went to Ernie Stewart. Whether she wanted to end Berhalter's career or not, sure, there might have been some of that. But it seemed like it was more of something like, you've done something worse, Greg, and everyone forgave you for it, but you had to rat out my son. Again, still not the right approach from Danielle and Claudio Reina. They probably should have shut their mouth and stay away from it. Gio Reyna's a grown man and he should deal with it. But that's more of what I got out of it. Berhalter kicked his wife, Rosalind. Kicking is an oversimplification. According to what came out after, he didn't just kick her, he threw her to the ground and kicked her, 2 or 3 times? So kicking is a bit of an oversimplification of the situation, but sure, we can word it that way for the sake of it. Then his girlfriend, when they were students at University of North Carolina in 1992. He has owned up to the incident. At the time since, privately and publicly, U.S. Soccer opened an investigation in January. Berhalter was eventually deemed eligible to be the candidate for his old job. The investigation cleared that the Reinas of criminal wrongdoing, but revealed that they had the habit of mean-spirited comments towards those who felt hindered in their son's progress. That is true. The Reinas probably should have, could have, and didn't shut up. But nowadays, they're probably gonna shut up, I'm assuming. But going on, let's see what else they have to say here in the super chat. And by the way, if you just arrived, I'm going to put the roster on screen before I close the stream once again. But as I said, overall, it's a positive roster. Tyler Avon, it's almost like Greg's human, capable of change. Maybe. For the first roster, this is very encouraging. The first roster Greg Berhalter put out. If he's going to continue this route, build a good roster, and continue to improve as a coach and as a person, yeah. Look, it's very hard for Greg to win over myself and many of the fans, but it's definitely not impossible. And I made a video talking about how Greg could win me over. I made a video, I believe, in the beginning of the summer, or actually June, of how he can win me over. So yes, he can win me over. And I'll put it this way. The article yesterday was a step back. The roster today is a step forward. This roster that came out to me was mostly positive. Tax Nutsack is saying, Tack, the ghost of MLS past are behind you. Hopefully. We'll see. Let's see. What else I have? Alex S is saying Trusty, Tessman, Paxton, Holmes, Mihailovic, Busio, Pukstas over Miles Raw. Let's see. Dwayne Holmes, I'm not for it. I'm not for Dwayne Holmes being in the national team. I've seen him here and there in the championship. I just don't see it. Now let's go to another one. Busio, well, he didn't have a good season in the second division of Italy, so I'm against that one. Pukstas, I'm with you. I think Pukstas could get a shot over Kremaski and Kate Cow. I think that one's a fair shout. Paxton Aronson, that's also a fair shout. Paxton Aronson. Tanner Tessman, also a fair shout. Trusty, I'm going to be honest with you. I've watched Trusty here and there. Trusty over Miles Robinson. I don't know, man. I understand that he's in Europe challenging himself. Trusty's also not that young by any means. Neither is Miles Robinson. To me, it's kind of like 6 for half a dozen. Maybe Trusty will be better than Miles in a few years. You got a point there, but I don't think that's a major deal breaker, just in my opinion. And maybe what Greg is doing in regards to Trusty is just letting him try to earn his spot at Sheffield, because Trusty's not playing for Sheffield. And since he's like, not really like a lock in the roster, Trusty, no. But yeah, I agree with you in regards to Tanner Tessman, Paxton, and Rokas Pukstas. The other ones, Mihailovic, you mentioned Mihailovic. Dude, Mihailovic playing the Gold Cup, it was very disappointing. And Mihailovic also struggling there in the Eredivisie. So we got to keep an eye on it. I was all for Mihailovic getting chances with the national team. He got it. He disappointed me. Doesn't mean he won't get other chances. Doesn't mean he's not a better player than Kremaski. He probably is. But again, Kremaski is more of a call-up based off potential. I don't think Kremaski is USMNT level right now. Neither is Kate Cow. And actually, neither is Miles Robinson, in my opinion. But anyhow, some of the names you put there, I do agree with you. Some I not so much. But I made my point there. But going on, let's see what else they have to say here in the article, and then I'll finalize here the other super chats. But they also add up and they say, though Berhalter described the event as an unfortunate period, no shit, it was an unfortunate period for himself and his family. He is ready to repair the relationship with Gio Reyna. We both want the U.S. to win the World Cup and be very successful, and now it's figuring out a way to cooperate to do that. I mean, look, actions speak louder than words. And he's been saying this ever since he was brought back that he wants to repair Gio Reyna. I've heard it from Greg. I want to see actions. I haven't seen any action to repair his relationship with Gio Reyna besides word vomiting. That's all he does. He word vomits. He doesn't do anything. I want to see actions. Saying it is very easy, right? Anyone can say anything. We start this process on how to set expectations a little and figure out how we're going to move forward together, he continued. That's what Greg Berhalter said. Some of it will involve him, which he's referring to Gio Reyna. Some of it will involve us. And eventually, hopefully, and hold on to this, hopefully, it leads towards Gio being comfortable in the team, comfortable that he's being evaluated fairly and coached fairly and held to the same norms and standards as everyone else. I don't like this hopefully. Hopefully makes it believe that maybe it won't work out. I'd like to hear something like, no, we're going to figure it out. It's going to happen. Or he could say something, as long as Gio wants to play for the national team, we are going to work this out. It's going to work. I don't like when a leader is not decisive. I think that's the right word, decisive. It's more of like, yes, we will figure it out. And then he can obviously say there's limitations to what he can do because Gio could just say, I'm not playing for you. And then he can't do anything about that. And it's on the federation. But I would like to hear Greg Berhalter be a bit more decisive and say, or more confident too, just say, we will work it out as long as Gio wants to be here. It will be sorted out. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that from Greg. That's why I'm a bit concerned. I don't know. Maybe I'm being skeptical. Maybe it's just me. We'll know. And then they say, Reina is in consideration for Berhalter's first roster. Well, he's not in the first roster. It's out. We are going to play Uzbekistan and Oman this September. And then let's see if they have anything else. As for Greg Berhalter, Rosalind Berhalter's relationship with Claudio and Daniel Reina, the head coach didn't have much to say. He just said, I don't think that's a subject I'm comfortable talking about. I also don't really care. And that does it for this article. Okay. Those are my thoughts on it. Like I said, this article yesterday was a step back for me in regards to Berhalter winning me over. The roster today was a step forward. I thought the roster was good. I understand what Alex was saying, Alex S. in the super chat. There are a few names that could have been replaced. I think maybe, Tanner Tessman could have been there instead of Kramaski. Maybe Tanner Tessman definitely earned it more. Let me put the roster on screen in case you just arrived so you can look at it. And if you just arrived, make sure to drop a like if you haven't already. Help the channel grow. Just, I don't know, try to get us to 500 likes maybe. 500 likes would be good. Alex S. is saying, I would take Reynolds, Vines, and Fossey over MLS Lifers. Just watch the full match replays when they play. So Brian Reynolds is another one that had an opportunity and didn't do that well. Who would you replace? Because the fullbacks there are all playing in Europe. Christopher Lund plays in Europe. Des plays in Europe. Jedi Robinson plays in Europe. Joe Scally plays in Europe. So unless what we do is you put Kevin Paredes for Cal, and then you bring Brian Reynolds there as another fullback. That's the only other option. Sam Vines, I'm sorry. Sam Vines doesn't cut it, man. Sam Vines doesn't cut it. And he's not playing for Antwerp. That one I have to disagree with you. Sam Vines is probably MLS level. You can be in Europe and still be MLS level. And to me, Sam Vines is that. And he's also coming back from an injury. He broke his leg last season. Came back, obviously, last season too. But I don't know. It doesn't cut it. Marlon Fossey. Haven't watched him enough. If you have watched Marlon Fossey, I'll take your word for it. They're saying, hopefully BJ didn't bully Greg Berhalter into calling up this roster. I mean, BJ's a strong guy, man. He can definitely push around Greg Berhalter if he wanted to physically. He's a strong guy. Looks like a football player. Tax Nutsack saying, remember when BJ used to bust our balls with the D roster? Yeah, I remember that. That was the Gold Cup. So overall, just to recap the roster once again, and I talked about how Adams is injured, Carter Vickers is injured, Gio Reyna is injured, Josh Sargent is injured, Taylor Booth is injured, and Zendejas is injured. The roster has Drake Callender from Inter Miami, Ethan Horvath, and Matt Turner from Nottingham Forest. Those are the goalkeepers. The defenders, we have Serginho Dest as one of the right backs, Christopher Lund that can play left back and right back. He's also in the roster. He plays for Palermo in the Serie B. Center back Mark McKenzie from Genk makes the roster. Kevin Paredes, that is a winger / fullback from Wolfsburg, makes the roster. Tim Ream, center back, makes the roster, of course, earned it. Chris Richards as well. Anthony Robinson or Jedi Robinson makes the roster as well from Fulham, left back from the U.S. men's national team. Miles Robinson from Atlanta United. Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach. The midfielders are Johnny Cardoso from Internacional, Ben Kremaski from Inter Miami, Luca De La Torre from Celta de Vigo, Weston McKennie from Juventus, Yunus Musa from AC Milan, Malik Tillman from PSV. The forwards are Brendan Aronson from Union Berlin, Balogun from Monaco, Cade Cowell from the San Jose Earthquakes, Ricardo Pepi from PSV, and Christian Pulisic from AC Milan, along with Timothy Weah from Juventus. Guys, that's the roster. I'll probably be doing more videos here and there. We're going to do a full coverage of the roster, live watch along, 7 things we learned. I'm just not going to do match previews because holy crap, I don't know jack crap about Oman or Uzbekistan. I don't feel like researching Oman and Uzbekistan, and I don't know anyone that knows anything about Oman and Uzbekistan. I know a lot of you probably didn't even know Oman was a country until we announced these friendlies. But we're going to be playing September. Tomorrow we have a video ranking the top 10 nations in all of the Americas, CONCACAF, CONMEBOL. Tonight, I'll be doing a live watch along for Inter Miami versus Nashville to watch Messi. That's mainly it. Maybe Walker Zimmerman will play. We'll see. I think he's injured. But that's all. That's all. Encouraging roster from Berhalter. I'm still overly skeptical. We're going to have to see what he does in camp, who he plays. But again, not having Jesus, Morris, Aaron Long, Acosta, that's all I was asking for a while. So it is a step forward. Let's enjoy that for now. All right. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Drop a like before you go and drop in the comment section. What do you think of this roster? What do you rate this roster? From 1 to 10, 5 being average. What do you rate this roster? Thanks for watching. Have a great day. I'll see you guys tonight for the Inter Miami live stream. Bye-bye. Oh, drop a like. Bye.